If you took every billionaire on Earth and erased their bank accounts tomorrow, wiped them to zero, no house, no stock, no name recognition, most of them would be rich again within 10 years. That's not a guess. It's happened repeatedly. People have gone bankrupt, lost companies, lost their reputations, and rebuilt fortunes from a studio apartment with nothing but a laptop and a grudge. Meanwhile, people who win the lottery, handed millions for free, zero effort, are broke again within 5 years, more often than not. So here's the question that actually matters. And it's not, how do I get money? It's this. What do rich people know how to do that has nothing to do with the money itself? Because if it were about the money, the lottery winners would stay rich. They don't. Which means wealth isn't a number sitting in an account. It's a skill. And skills can be learned by anyone watching this right now, including someone with $40 and a bad week behind them. So, today I'm going to break down exactly what that skill is, why almost nobody teaches it correctly, and the 3-part equation that every person who's built wealth from zero, not inherited it, built it, has used, whether they realized it or not. Let's deal with the bad advice first, because there's a lot of it, and it's the reason most people stay stuck. Just save more. Cut out lattes. Get a budgeting app. None of that is wrong exactly. It's just answering a different question. Saving money protects money you already have. It doesn't create new money. You can clip every coupon in America, and you will not save your way into $1 million in your lifetime on a median income. The math doesn't work. And deep down, most people already know that, which is why budgeting advice always feels a little hollow. Then there's the other extreme, the just think like a millionaire crowd. Visualize abundance, manifest it, get into the right mindset. This one's worse, honestly, because it's not even wrong in a useful way. It's wrong in a way that wastes your time and sells you a course. Here's the actual split. Nobody draws clearly enough. There's income and there's wealth, and they are not the same thing, and confusing them is probably the single most expensive mistake people make with money. A surgeon making $400,000 a year can have a net worth of basically zero. I've seen it. Big mortgage, 2 leased cars, private school tuition, and at the end of the year, the number in savings hasn't moved. High income, no wealth. Meanwhile, a guy who bought a laundromat in 1987 and never touched it again has been quietly compounding for almost 40 years and could buy that surgeon's house in cash. Income is what you're paid for your time. Wealth is what keeps paying you after you stop trading time for it. Once that distinction clicks, the rest of this video is going to make a lot more sense. Okay, here's the part I actually want you to remember, because this is the framework that shows up in different words, different language, different industries, across literally every wealth from nothing story I've ever researched. Wealth comes down to 3 things multiplied together, not added. That matters. Because if any one of the 3 is zero, the whole thing is zero, no matter how strong the other 2 are. First, a problem, not a passion, not a purpose. A problem that real people have and would pay to make disappear. This sounds obvious, until you watch how many people start businesses around what they want to make, instead of what someone else needs solved. Those are very different starting points, and only one of them reliably produces money. Second, reach. How many people actually have that problem? You can solve a real problem perfectly for 12 people and still go broke, because 12 people times even a generous price tag isn't a living, let alone wealth. This is why the same skill, say fixing a leaking faucet, earns a local plumber a decent wage, but earns almost nothing in scale, while a piece of software that fixes a digital version of the same kind of problem can reach 1 million people overnight, and barely costs more to deliver to the millionth person than it did to the first. Third, and this is the one almost nobody tells you about, leverage. Specifically, how much of you the thing requires once it's built. A surgeon's income requires the surgeon, every single time, forever. There's no version of surgery that happens while the surgeon is asleep. That's not a knock on surgeons. It's one of the most valuable jobs that exists. It's just a structural ceiling. Compare that to a guy who wrote a piece of code once in 2015 that still processes payments for small businesses today, while he's on vacation. The code doesn't need him in the room. That's leverage. Problem times, reach times, leverage. That's the equation. Most financial advice only ever talks about the third leg, and only in the context of investing, which is real, and we'll get to it. But it skips the part where the money to invest had to come from somewhere in the first place. Let's take a quick detour here, because this explains a lot about why this feels new, even though it isn't. Most of us grew up around people who were paid for their time, because most jobs are structured that way. And you absorb the financial worldview of the household you grow up in before you're old enough to question it. If money in your house meant a paycheck every 2 weeks, your internal definition of making money probably still means a paycheck every 2 weeks, even now, even if you'd never say that out loud. There's nothing wrong with a paycheck. I'm not about to do the thing where I tell you to quit your job in the next 10 minutes of this video. That's reckless. And frankly, it's the kind of advice that's caused real damage to people who took it too literally. What I am saying is that a paycheck sits on only one leg of that equation. It's reach times leverage that's usually missing, not effort. And the myth that makes this worse is the idea that wealthy people got there by being ruthless, or lucky, or somehow different from you in a way that can't be replicated. Hollywood loves this version because it's a better story. But when you actually look at first-generation wealth, not inherited, built, the pattern is almost boringly consistent. Someone noticed a problem most people were tolerating instead of solving, built something that addressed it for more people than just themselves, and structured it so the thing kept producing value without requiring their hands on it every hour of every day. That's IT. It's not a secret handshake, it's a different starting question. So how does someone actually start this with, say, $300 and a full-time job? You don't start by looking for an idea. You start by looking for a complaint. Pay attention for 2 weeks to every single time you or someone around you says some version of, "Ugh, I wish there was an easier way to do this." Write everyone down. Most of them will be small. Good. Small, annoying, recurring problems are exactly where this starts, because they're the ones people will quietly pay to never deal with again. Then ask the reach question honestly. Is this a problem 12 people have? Or is it a problem that exists in some form for 12 million people? You don't need 12 million customers. You need to know the ceiling exists before you build toward it. Because building a beautiful solution to a tiny problem is one of the most common ways smart, hardworking people stay broke for years without understanding why. Then, and this is the step people skip because it's the least exciting, build the leverage piece on purpose. That might mean turning a service you do manually into a template, a system, or eventually software. It might mean writing something once that keeps reaching people long after you wrote it, instead of repeating the same advice one-on-one forever. It might mean using your time now to build the asset that stops needing your time later. The order matters. You're trading time now, specifically to buy back time later. If you skip that trade and just grind on income, you've built a slightly better job, not wealth. And once money does start coming in, even small, inconsistent amounts, that's the point where actual investing starts to matter. Because now, you're applying that same leverage principle to capital instead of just to your own labor. Compounding is just leverage wearing a different outfit. Same equation, different leg. None of this happens in a weekend. Almost every real example of this took years of unglamorous repetition before it looked like overnight success from the outside. That's the part people leave out, because it doesn't make a good thumbnail. Let's keep the end practical here, because I don't want this to be one of those videos that sounds great and changes nothing. 1. Write down every problem you've personally complained about in the last month, not abstract ones. Yours. The personal ones are usually the most honest data you have. 2. For each one, ask who else has it. Be brutal here. Everyone is not an answer. Get specific enough that you could describe the exact kind of person dealing with this. 3. Pick the one with the best combination of real problem and biggest audience, and spend this week building the smallest possible version of a fix. Not the perfect version. The smallest one that actually works. Ship something embarrassingly simple before you ship something impressive. Impressive takes too long, and usually never ships at all. That's the whole starting move. It's not glamorous. It's also exactly what happened, in some version, before almost every wealth story that didn't start with an inheritance. Here's the thing I keep coming back to. Money doesn't actually care where it came from. It doesn't reward effort, and it doesn't punish a lack of starting capital nearly as much as we're taught to believe. It rewards a problem solved for enough people in a way that doesn't require you standing there forever. You don't need permission to start that this week. You need a notebook and an honest list of things that annoy you. If this gave you a different way of looking at your own situation, that's genuinely the only metric I care about with this channel, not views that. Subscribe if you want the next one when it's out, and I'll see you in the next video.